But besides making those choices and doing those types of behaviors, from reading the book, I think what I learned is that not only is that important, but it's really important to find out where this came from. Because if you don't do that, if you don't at least make a stab at where that came from, it's still going to be there haunting you, so to speak.
Well, let's stay with my client who eats the ice cream.
Okay.
She now calls her character the foodie. And when the foodie comes up, she can now detect that it's there and make a different choice. But she can further explore where the foodie came from in her own history. And what she has discovered is that her mother also used food to stuff down her feelings and hide her more difficult emotions.
So she role modeled for her.
And so she role modeled this strategy for her daughter. But now the foodie is really destroying this person's self-esteem. It's affecting her relationships. It's affecting how she feels about herself. So it isn't enough just to understand where it comes from. We say in the book, insight is not transformation. It's useful, but it doesn't necessarily change your behavior. With shadow work, you can slow down this automatic reflex response and really make different choices.
So it's combining the two, the knowledge of what was going on with what you can do to make those changes.
Right, the self-understanding and ending the self-sabotaging behavior or turning it into more self-directed behavior.
So why did the two of you, you have a practice, why did the two of you decide to write this particular book, Romancing the Shadow, which is a wonderful title and an interesting title, Illuminating the Dark Side of the Soul? How did you decide to do that?
Well, I had edited a collected volume called Meeting the Shadow, which came out in 1991 and had an unexpected success. And so I was interested in following up that book with a more comprehensive and also more useful next stage. And so we move in our lives from meeting the shadow, simply encountering it in ourselves and in other people, to romancing it. And by that I mean actually coaxing it out from behind the boundaries of our awareness and developing an ongoing relationship with it.
And then you're suddenly taking something that was ominous, perhaps, and making it work for you.
That's right. We can really turn the darkness into light when we have the tools. And it's difficult to find the tools. I mean, our marriages don't come with instruction manuals.
No, and there's no training.
That's right. And so most people need help. And we're really offering some tools to end these kinds of fights and to get a deeper understanding of ourselves as well.
How do you feel, speaking of marriages, do you feel that doing shadow work can help marriages? And do you need to do that shadow work individually and then come together as a couple? Or can you actually do shadow work in marital therapy?
In our model, each of us is responsible for our own shadow characters. And so when a fight begins, we often suggest that people stop, hit the pause button, and take time out and begin to do their own shadow work, but then come back together again, and when they discuss what they have found and they share how they feel about themselves and about each other, they can deepen their intimacy. Now, if they were working with a therapist who had these tools, they could do it together at the same time, but I think it's harder to do that when you're on your own.
Well, is this something that if a person doesn't have a therapist in town here that does this, is this something that they can use your book as a couple to begin the process and maybe give their therapist a copy?
That would be great. We would actually love that. In the back of the book, there's a section called a Shadow Work Handbook. And we've outlined a very kind of step-by-step procedure for individuals and couples to use so that they can get a handle on this process. You actually have
an 800 number that people can call to help with shadow work also.
That's right. If you'd like help,
could you tell us what
tools, that is? The number is actually listed in the back of the book, but it's 1-800-484-9962, and then you press 3104, and we will call you back and see what we can set up for you.
That's great. How do you feel? What about those people, that small segment of our society, the sociopaths, the psychopaths, the people that don't have conscience?
Yes.
They may not be interested in this process anyway, but do they have a shadow?
You know, what I would say is they are, in a way, taken over by their shadows. For people who do more criminal behaviors, people who are extremely violent or abusive and don't have any guilt or feelings of conscience about it, we really didn't write the book for them, because that's another field of psychology. This book is more for common everyday occurrences of shadows, because, you know, each of us meets our dark side every day, in fact usually more than once.
Well, it's a process where somebody says something and they feel guilty.
That's right.
Or if somebody, criticizes somebody, as you were speaking about it, they feel guilty. You know, where do these things come from? Why do I beat myself up about these things? Because it comes out of nowhere. These feelings sort of ooze.
They do. They ooze up. You might have even sworn to yourself as a mother that you wouldn't do what your parents did to you. And yet you find yourself yelling at your daughter in exactly the same way, maybe even the same words. And you can begin to detect there the family shadow that's getting passed on from generation to generation.
Oh, how true that is.
If you could, in the moment before you yell at her or him, if you could stop yourself and observe the feelings coming up and the impulse to yell, and stop yourself from doing that, and in fact do something different, you would spare the next generation.
Do you think that people have that capability when they're in the throes of passion or anger, that they can stop themselves and do that, or do they need some work before that?
I think you can learn with the tools and the guidance. You can learn self-observation. You can learn when the shadow character is about to erupt by detecting the very specific cues that we teach in the book.
Even the feelings, perhaps.
The feelings, the physical sensations, and that voice, which has a repetitive message each time that a specific shadow character is there. And then you have just a split second in which to stop it. You may not catch it every time, but slowly, gradually, you can learn to do it differently.
And even if you don't stop it, there's no reason you can't return to it later and process it.
That's right.
And learn from
That's right.
from that.